Carlos King thought he had seen every kind of chaos the industry could throw at him, but nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared him for the moment the cameras turned on him instead of the cast he usually controlled. Picture this. The man known for building reality TV empires, shaping unforgettable personalities, and pushing networks to record-breaking success, suddenly being escorted off a live set, blindsided and humiliated in front of millions. It wasn't a rumor. It wasn't exaggerated. It happened in real time, unfiltered, raw, and shocking, even for people who had watched him navigate storms for years. And the worst part? It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. According to insiders, this was a takedown that had been planned quietly, carefully, behind his back. What nobody expected was how this moment would expose years of secrets, grudges, and betrayals that had been simmering behind the scenes. Everyone always thought Carlos was the puppet master, the one pulling the strings, shaping every storyline, pushing cast members toward dramatic explosions that made fans scream at their TVs. But that day, on that stage, it became clear he wasn't the one in control. And the story behind his live TV firing might be even darker than any plot twist he ever created. To understand how things spiraled this far, you have to rewind years before all of this blew up. Carlos King didn't grow up with a silver spoon. He wasn't handed fame. He built it from scratch, hour by hour, season by season, heartbreak by heartbreak. When he stepped into the world of reality TV, he wasn't a producer with power. He was the guy carrying notebooks, rushing to meetings, praying for one big chance. And when he finally got it, he didn't waste a second. He worked harder than everyone in the room. Some say too hard. Others say he ran himself into the ground, trying to prove he deserved a seat at a table that wasn't designed for someone like him. But that hunger, that fire, that relentless drive made him a powerhouse. He wasn't just creating TV, he was shaping a culture. People tuned in because Carlos had a unique way of pulling raw humanity out of people. Their flaws, their fears, their pain, their joy. He turned it all into something audiences couldn't look away from. Behind the scenes, he fought battles nobody saw. Arguments with executives, clashes with editors, breakdowns from cast members who said the pressure was too much. Yet, every time things got rough, Carlos bounced back stronger. He earned a reputation, not just as a creator, but as someone who held nothing back. And while that fearlessness gave us some of the most iconic moments in reality TV history, it also created enemies. Quiet enemies, people who smiled at him during meetings but whispered behind closed doors, people who benefited from his genius but despised how powerful he was becoming, people who waited patiently for the perfect moment to knock him off his throne. That moment would come years later, on live television. Here's where things truly start to unravel. The day of the incident, the atmosphere on set felt off. Crew members who usually laughed with Carlos avoided eye contact. Executives he'd worked with for years stood in corners, talking in low voices. Even cast members felt something strange brewing. But Carlos, always the professional, kept the focus where it belonged, the show. He walked onto the set with the same energy he always had, confident, sharp, ready to deliver. The cameras rolled. The audience cheered. Everything looked normal. Until it wasn't. Midway through the segment, a producer's voice crackled through Carlos's earpiece. The tone was stiff, rehearsed, almost icy. They told him to wrap the conversation early, to cut the segment short, to stand by for a special announcement. Carlos frowned, confused. There was no special announcement on the rundown, no last-minute changes, nothing. Then, the studio lights shifted. A senior executive stepped onto the stage, someone Carlos had been battling behind the scenes for months, someone who thought his creative style was too risky and too unpredictable, someone who had been pushing for tighter control over his shows. The executive smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was tense, forced, the kind of smile people make when they're hiding something sharp behind their teeth. And then, in front of the audience, in front of the cameras, in front of the entire country, they announced that Carlos Kin was being released from his position, effective immediately. Live, on air. The room froze. The audience gasped. Even the cast looked stunned. Carlos stood there, holding his microphone, his face a mixture of confusion, shock, and disbelief. This wasn't a conversation backstage. This wasn't a private meeting. This was a public execution, televised and orchestrated with precision. But here's the twist. This firing had been planned for weeks. Emails had been exchanged, meetings held without him, decisions made without his knowledge. They wanted to embarrass him, diminish him, strip away his power while the world watched. But why? That's where the real drama begins. According to insiders, tensions between Carlos and the network had reached a boiling point. They claimed he was pushing the limits too far, demanding bigger reactions, more shocking moments, more conflict. They said he ignored warnings, refused to compromise, and clashed with executives every time pressure increased. But people in Carlos's circle say the opposite. They say he was being pushed by the network. They wanted higher ratings, more viral moments, more drama. And when things went wrong, they didn't want to take responsibility. They wanted a fall guy. And Carlos was the perfect target. Weeks before his firing, there were heated arguments about a dangerous on-set incident involving cast members. Some claimed the drama had been manipulated. Others said the network knew everything and encouraged it. But once footage leaked and social media exploded, the network chose to save itself. They pointed the finger at Carlos, quietly at first, then loudly. Behind the scenes, he tried to defend himself. He sent emails, made calls, asked for meetings, but nobody responded. Doors began closing one by one. People he once trusted distanced themselves. Phone calls went unanswered. Invitations disappeared. And then, the ambush. After security escorted him from the set, Carlos didn't speak for days. Not publicly, not privately. Even his closest friends didn't hear from him. He was humiliated, angry, hurt. A man who built his career on controlling narratives suddenly lost control of his own story. But when he finally broke his silence, he didn't hold back. He went live, unfiltered, emotional, shaking with anger. He accused the network of betrayal. He claimed they used him, drained him, then threw him aside to protect themselves. He said he had receipts. He said he had emails proving the truth. He promised to expose everything. That live stream ignited the internet like gasoline on fire. Supporters flooded his comments, saying he was done wrong. Critics said he was finally being held accountable. Former cast members stepped forward, some defending him, some exposing him. Old footage resurfaced. Alleged behind-the-scenes recordings leaked. Suddenly, the public wasn't watching a show anymore. They were watching a man's life come undone in real time. And the deeper people dug, the darker the story became. Whispers turned into accusations. Collaborators revealed years of tension. Executives claimed he was impossible to work with. Cast members said they felt pressured and manipulated. But others jumped to his defense, insisting he cared deeply about the people he worked with and fought for their stories. The truth was messy, complicated, complicating. Carlos wasn't a villain. He wasn't a saint. He was human, a flawed, passionate creator who pushed himself past exhaustion, trying to build something unforgettable. And now the consequences were suffocating him. Behind closed doors, friends say he broke down more than once. Losing his position wasn't just financial, it was emotional. Reality TV wasn't a job, it was his identity, his purpose, his entire world. To have it ripped away publicly, brutally, without warning, it shattered him. But here's where the story shifts again. Carlos King doesn't stay down. While the industry whispered about his downfall, he was quietly planning his next move. New partnerships, new platforms, new shows, independence, freedom, power without gatekeepers. And if he succeeds, it could change everything. Some say networks are terrified, others say they underestimated him. But one thing is clear, the man they tried to silence is finding his voice again. And he's louder than ever. The truth is, Carlos is standing at a crossroads. He can disappear, fade quietly into the background, let the industry define him, or he can fight back harder than he ever has. And knowing his history, knowing how he rose from nothing the first time, knowing how many storms he survived, it's almost certain he's choosing the second option. Because every person who tried to bury him forgot one thing. Carlos King knows how to build a story, and he knows how to rebuild himself. His firing wasn't the end. It was the spark. A painful, humiliating, devastating spark that might ignite the most powerful chapter of his life. The networks took his stage, but he's building a new one. They took his microphone, but they can't silence his voice. They ended his show, but they didn't end his story. And if there's one thing viewers know about Carlos King, it's that his biggest plot twists always come after the darkest moments. So buckle up, because this chapter, this isn't the downfall. It's the beginning of a comeback nobody saw coming.